Hello students, in this part we are going to understand the structure of spinal cord. Now spinal cord is also called as myelin. Spinal cord is actually the posterior extension of the medulla oblongata and it is enclosed inside the neural canal of the vertebral column. So suppose if this is the spinal cord and this is the vertebral column, it is actually enclosed inside the vertebral column. The vertebral column has a cavity in between and from that cavity or through that cavity the spinal cord runs. So the spinal cord is actually the extension of the medulla oblongata and it is enclosed inside the neural canal of the vertebral column and it is also called as myelin. Now this spinal cord is about 45 centimeters long in males and 43 centimeters long in females. There is a slight difference in between the length in the case of males and females. In males it is 45 centimeters and in females it is 43 centimeters and it is about 2 centimeters thick and 35 gram in weight. It weighs about 35 grams approximately. So the length in males is slight bigger or slight longer in the males, that is 45 centimeters and 43 centimeters in female. 2 centimeters thick and it is about 35 grams approximately in the weight. Now this spinal cord is protected by the meninges. As we saw in the brain is also protected by the layer of meninges. Here also the spinal cord is protected by the meninges. The innermost layer, that is pia mater, it is attached to the tissue of the spinal cord and above the pia mater there is a space. That space is called as subarachnoid space. This subarachnoid space is filled with the cerebrospinal fluid and above the subarachnoid space there is the second layer of the meninges, that is arachnoid matter. Above arachnoid matter again there is a bit space and that space is called as subdural space. Above the subdural space follows the third layer of the meninges, that is dura mater, and above the dura mater, in between the bone and the dura mater there is a bit space and that space is called as epidural space. And this epidural space is filled with adipose tissue. So the innermost layer is pia mater, the second layer is, or the middle layer is arachnoid matter and the uppermost layer is dura mater. In between the dura mater and the bone there is a space and that space is called as epidural space and it is covered or it is filled with adipose tissue. Now this spinal cord, it starts from the first cervical vertebra, that is called as atlas, to the first lumbar vertebra. Now in other words you can say that the spinal cord, it arises from the opening of the skull, that is foramen magnus, the opening of the skull or the first cervical vertebra, where the first cervical vertebra is situated. It starts from there to the first lumbar vertebra. Now if you have to show it in a diagram, it will look like this. It starts from the first cervical vertebra to the first lumbar vertebra. Now there are two swellings in the spinal cord. First swelling is at the first cervical vertebra and the second one is at the first lumbar vertebra. Now the point of the spinal cord at the first lumbar vertebra, this point is called as Conus Medullaris, and from this Conus Medullaris further the spinal cord arises, or the spinal cord continues in the form of a strand or in the form of a thread, and that part is called as the phylum terminal or phylum terminal, you can say. Now here from this Conus Medullaris a thread-like structure arises or continues, that is called as the phylum terminal. Now here this spinal cord, the complete spinal cord is divided into 31 segments. The complete spinal cord is divided into 31 segments. The cervical segments are, there are 7 cervical segments, but from these from the 7 cervical segments there are 8 nerves passing. So here here we write cervical 8. So 7 cervical segments and 8 nerves pass from through these segments. There are 12 thoracic segments, 5 lumbar segments, and 5 sacral segments, and 1 coccyx segments. So here the total is about 31 segments. The spinal cord is divided in about 31 segments. So here, if you have to see how the nerves they come out from the segments or the vertebral column through the spinal cord, the nerves of the spinal cord, how they come out through the vertebral column. Now suppose if these are the cut of vertebral column or vertebras, here from these the nerves they arise and they come out from this gap in between. In this way the nerve arise outside or they come outside of the vertebral column. Also in the phylum part, the nerves they arise from this conus medullaris and they pass through the vertebrae in this way. Now here from the points they come out or they point out, and this part looks like a ponytail or this part looks like a tail. So that's why this whole part, this tail-like structure, is called as the cauda equina. Cauda means the tail and equina, the name is derived because the part looks like the horse tail. That's why it is called as cauda equina. So this is the structure of the spinal cord. It is about 45 centimeters long in males, 43 centimeters long in females, 2 centimeters thick and 35 grams in weight. And it is protected by the 3 layers of the meninges. In between the third layer, the outermost layer and the bone, that is dura mater, and the bone there is a space. That space is called as epidural space, and this space is filled with the adipose tissue. The spinal cord starts with the first cervical vertebra to the first lumbar vertebra, and the complete spinal cord is divided into 31 segments. Now it starts from the first cervical vertebra. There is a swelling at the first cervical vertebra, and that swelling is called as cervical swelling. And then there is another swelling at the first lumbar vertebra, and that is called as lumbar swelling. And from this lumbar swelling, further the spinal cord continues in a strand-like structure that is called as phylum terminal. And the point of the spinal cord at the first lumbar vertebra is called as conus medullaris. And the further part of the spinal cord looks like the tail of a horse. That's why it is called as cauda equina.